Welcome to Southwest Florida Real Estate Update, hosted by local realtors Jim, Michael, and Morgan York of the York Real Estate Group of Downing Fry Realty. Our show will bring you the most up-to-date information on the local real estate market, featuring the leading experts in the real estate field.
Hi, and welcome to the Southwest Florida Real Estate Update. I'm Michael York of the York Real Estate Group, and today we're joined by our host, Jim York, and his guest, Don Ross Jr., President of Ross Title and Escrow.
Thank you, Michael, for the introduction. Well, Don Ross, thank you for coming on the show
You're
this
welcome,
month
Jim.
again. So for our monthly update, people that haven't seen the show here, okay, let's give them a little background about yourself.
Well, my name's Don Ross. I'm a local real estate attorney. I've been practicing law for over 30 years. I own Ross Title and Escrow on the corner of 6th Avenue North and 41. We have 8 employees that handle quite a few closings. I have my own law firm. I'm also a shareholder in Downing Fry Realty. I've been counsel there for 25 or so years. So between the three entities, I get a broad exposure to quite a few different issues.
You know, we just tell everybody we do use you as our closing agent, and people always walk out of there very happy. So the one thing you do is...
It's nice when that happens.
It is, and the big thing is you communicate.
We try. Returning phone calls is a big pet peeve of mine, so yes.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about the pitfalls of inspections, people not getting them, number one, and the second thing is what to look for when you're doing an inspection.
Well, when you told me that we were doing this show, you know, I thought inspections would be a good topic because I probably get more questions on inspections than absolutely anything else in either the NABOR or the FAR/BAR contract. I mean, over the last 30 years, those questions just keep coming over and over and over. And then there's certain questions that just seem to be continuously asked. I mean, we continuously get new agents. You might get agents who primarily focus on cash transactions, and you know, they may or may not get inspections. You get people who are quite good at it, like yourself. You have a construction background, so you know what you're doing. But out of everything in the contract, I get more questions, you know, as the attorney for the company on inspections than anything, bar none.
And everybody should get an inspection. We were just talking about that before the show. Is lots of people, you know, in a $500,000 home, they price it as per the square footage, but it's less than $500 typically for a home inspection.
Well, to me, it's stunning that people will spend $400,000 or $500,000 or more, and then not want to spend $400 or $500 for an inspection. Or we know the people who live there, or they're friends of ours, or we rented it. And they do not want to spend the extra $500 for the inspection. I typically use metaphors or analogies. I'm a father of 4. You know, and when I had my wife had our first child, I was in school. Even though I was dead broke at the time, I went out and got life insurance. I mean, it was a prudent thing to do. If you're investing in a piece of real estate, I think it's prudent to know as much as you can know about the property so that you can at least plan for the future. You'll know when to replace the water heater. You'll know when to plan for replacing the air conditioner. You'll know when to plan on replacing the roof, for example. I mean, this is what I use. You know, these are the types of points I bring up with my own children, who among the 4 of them have bought 9 homes so far. So I said, this is the reason for an inspection. It tells you things that are broken. You know, it might be broken in your mind.
Right.
It might not be broken under the contract, and it helps you plan for the future. So if you're spending a lot of money, and I assume you know when you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, it's almost irresponsible not to know what you're buying.
So let's get into the key point here, okay, is that we're going to have a home inspection. The biggest confusion that I think you're getting in real estate agents and buyers, sellers, is what is covered in the contract, the typical, not an as-is, but a regular contract.
You know, we have NABOR, Naples Board of Realtors, and then we have the Florida Bar, Florida Real Estate, the Realtors contract. FAR/BAR is our acronym. And they have different definitions. To help make the point, in NABOR, which is this contract right here, we
Our
have
local board here.
Yeah, we have three basic categories. We have defective inspection items, and then we have, the definition of
Cosmetic.
working condition and cosmetic.
Mhm.
So any realtor, any customer should at least know those three things and should go over those three things with their customer. Yesterday, I was on the phone. I had a conference call with a husband and wife who happened to be in South Africa. Husband's an attorney, and they have a regular NABOR contract, but they had an addendum that gave them the ability to terminate for any reason in their sole discretion within 15 days. So I'm explaining to the attorney in Southwest Africa, just because something's broke, it might not be considered broke under the contract.
Right.
So, yesterday happened to be D-Day for terminating for any reason at all under the due diligence provision, and I had to explain to them that after this date, limited roof life is cosmetic, because that was an issue with him. Missing and torn screens is cosmetic, and so on. So I said, are you happy with the house? If you're happy with the house, you're running the risk that the seller might say no to something that's cosmetic. Would you still be happy with the transaction if you went forward? The as-is part of the contract, I really tell people, you use this when it's a deal breaker issue. You might, if it's early in the 15 days, you might ask nicely, here's an invoice, could you please fix this?
Right.
And by the way, if you don't, you're going to have to tell the next buyer if this contract is terminated. So that sort of puts it in perspective for the seller. But you start out nice, and then if it's a deal breaker for you, by day 15, if that's your time limit, you need to terminate, and there's a certain way to do that.
Yeah, and I think the big problem with everybody is they don't, maybe they do, maybe they don't, but they don't explain the contract the way it's written, okay? And cosmetic, like you said, can be the cracked roof tiles, or it's a really a broad range of things, pavers that are uneven, but things that have to be in working condition. Usually how I explain it, your air conditioner has to be in working condition.
Sure.
Your appliances have to be in working condition. Your lights have to be working, not the bulbs, but the lights itself.
Well, in working condition under NABOR, is it working in the manner it was designed to work?
Okay.
And so there's a lot of gray area in this contract, but people not wanting to get an inspection, to me, is just crazy.
Right.
I usually recommend to the realtor, have an email in the file where you recommend to your customer, to at least sleep on it, that you realize it's a lot of money. And I'm not, minimizing $500. I mean,
Right.
it is a significant amount of money, but $400,000, if that's the purchase
Right.
price, is a lot more money.
That's right.
But, a letter in your file to your client saying, you really think this is important. It's a large transaction, and for the sake of $500, I really question whether it's a good idea for you to waive your rights to some of these repair items, once the closing has already happened, because in many cases, you don't have a right to go back once you've moved in and say, hey, the garbage disposal is broken.
Right.
You're accepting the condition of the property as of the effective date if you don't do the inspection. People don't understand that. So if you give them the old sleep on it letter, I think sleeping on it is good advice.
Right, it is.
For
on
a
anything.
lot of things
Right,
in
a
life.
lot of
I mean,
things, right.
really, people are exhausted or in a
Right.
bad mood at the end of the day. Let them sleep on it, and then you call in the morning, and a lot of times with me, they've changed their mind. They've thought about it, they've
Right.
slept on it, and they say, it's $500, and Don's right, we should do this. So, not having one is huge. Not pointing out those three general definitions: defective inspection items, what's working condition, it works in the manner it was designed to operate, and cosmetic. Cosmetic, limited roof life is a huge thing.
Right.
Cracked and curling tiles, the standard for the roof in the NABOR contract is so minimal. It just needs to be watertight and structurally sound. That's it. And if your insurance agent is saying you need 5 years of useful life in your roof, it could be okay under the contract, but not okay for insurance purposes.
Right.
So, if you explain it correctly, and then ask for whatever the buyer wants,
Right.
but you've warned him you might not get it.
Yeah, that, right.
Whatever you get, you're going to look like a superstar.
Yep.
You're getting more than they're entitled to.
Well, Don, we're going to take a little short break,
Sure.
and we're going to be right back and have a little commercial about the York Group and Mr. Don Ross, too.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thinking of buying or selling a home in Naples, Marco Island, Bonita, or Estero, Florida? Think of the most experienced York Real Estate Group, associated with the #1 brokerage in Southwest Florida, Downing Fry Realty, which produces yearly real estate transactions of over $1 billion. Jim, Michael, and Morgan make up the York Real Estate Group of Downing Fry Realty, with over $275 million in sales transactions, along with offering over 25 combined years' experience in the local market. The Yorks can offer the experience and trust you need in a realtor. Call them today at 239-273-6727 or visit their website at www.naplesyorkrealestate.com.
Looking for a real estate closing agent in Southwest Florida? Ross Title and Escrow has over 25 years experience and has closed over 20,000 residential real estate transactions. Donald Ross Jr., president of Ross Title and Escrow and a practicing attorney in the state of Florida with a degree in taxation, is here to service your needs. Call Mr. Ross or one of our 4 closing agents for a free consultation today.
Welcome back. Don, let's talk about, I don't want to use the word bad inspectors.
I think you just did.
Well, it's a way of politely doing it, okay? Is that everybody has their own way of doing business. That's the way I was trying to put it, they really don't. I've been using inspectors for years and trying to explain to them, how our contract is written, and gave them copies of our contract, because I think they're going a little bit overboard on their inspections. So, and maybe not killing deals, but just not doing it properly. Like we just had an example. I don't want to take too much time because we're limited here. But my daughter just did a deal, which my daughter and son are in real estate with me, and the home inspector did. It was her buyer, and the garage floor was level with the driveway. The pavers were butted up there. In some houses, there's a little drip there, or ledge there. In this particular the builder has built, hundreds of homes, but that's how he does it. As long as the pitch is away from the garage, it's perfectly all right. And he put it in there and talked to the buyer and said, that's not the way, whatever. But it's built to code. It's built to the county code, so you can mention it, but it's not a defective item.
No.
And that's where the gray area is on all this stuff.
Well, what I hate to impugn anybody's motives, but lawyers get accused of killing deals, to be blunt. I mean, a lot of people would prefer a title company because, oh God, if you use an attorney, they're going to kill the deal, and they're going to be expensive, and total misconceptions. At least for me anyways. I can't talk for everyone, but there are some attorneys who are primarily litigators. I have a son who's primarily a litigator. It's in his nature to kill deals. He kills for a living. I mean, litigators are
that's right.
Fighters. That's what they do. It's part of their DNA. You want, if you're going with real estate, an attorney and an inspector, somebody who understands the contract and who's able to put the whole thing in perspective for their customer and report things accurately, not overblow certain things, not distort certain things, and distinguish between whether or not it's defective and recommendations if you want to further improve the home. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, I added up the number of homes my children have purchased. It's 9. And I've explained to each one of them when they bought their initial home that the inspection report, will tell you things that are broken. It'll make recommendations that, hey, the roof is getting old, you might want to replace it, or the air conditioner is 23 years old. It's past its useful life. It's still in working condition. It's still functioning in the manner it was designed to work. So it'll make a lot of recommendations. It might recommend further inspections. And if something's broken, then it should be fixed. So the inspection report does more, if it's done correctly, than what the contract requires. And I want to know how old
That's
some
right.
of these things
Yep.
are, so I can advise my kids on when to start budgeting for certain items. But you know, we've harped on this before. You want a good inspector. A good inspector is somebody who's competent, somebody who's trustworthy, somebody who's not trying to show things just to show how great he is or she is.
Right.
You know, some attorneys will move a comma just,
Right.
you know, for the sake of moving the comma. That's the perception. Some inspectors will essentially do the same thing. I found a valve that was stuck. Well, the valve's never been closed. You know, my favorite, the valve under the sink.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever shut the thing off in my bathroom upstairs, ever. I know it's been turned a couple of times when we've had it cleaned out, but that's it. So getting somebody who's competent, somebody who's familiar with the contract is a huge
Right.
benefit. Huge benefit.
And what else do you have on your list there, Ray?
Well, it's part and parcel of the inspection report. I get all the time that he recommends or she recommends GFI outlets.
Right, that's we were
know,
talking about that.
Or you know, different wiring in the breaker box.
Right.
And I always have to use, the example I always use is, my home is an older home. My father was a builder. My father and my uncles were builders, and they built a lot of the house. You were a builder.
Right.
If I sold my house, at the moment, I do not have impact glass. I've ordered it, but I don't have it right now. We haven't had it for 40 years.
Right.
Never had a problem, ever. We're across from the beach. Just because code requires impact glass today doesn't mean the lack of impact glass in my house is a defective item. So just because my home, when it was built, the code did not require GFI outlets, which are those electrical outlets that have a little breaker that
That's
pops
right.
out when they're overloaded. Just because code then didn't require it, they didn't exist. It didn't exist.
Right.
Doesn't mean if the inspector puts it in his report that he recommends GFI outlets for the kitchen, that the seller has to do it. It is not a defective item. It might be good advice, depending upon what you're going to be using those outlets for. It certainly is good advice to have impact glass. I'm getting it myself. But the house has been in the family 40 years. We haven't had a problem, but I think it's about time.
Yeah, that's, I think the definition is what you said. Good advice is good, but it's not required, because we get these in the reports, and it's just, you know, we want to protect our buyer,
Sure.
but, you know, it can be overboard, and they're coming from up north. They really don't understand how homes are built here. They're built differently than up north, and the codes are certainly different down here than they are up north. So.
The code's a lot more stringent in many areas, and they're not familiar with the living conditions down here. You know, fortunately, both of us are from up north, so we can relate to people from up north more readily. But you know, you want an inspector who can put things in perspective.
Yep. I think to end the show, I think the best advice we can give to any of the buyers or even the sellers that are watching the
Sure.
show is that don't skim over the contract. It should be explained to them prior to even when they're listing a home. I always even go over some of the contracts, sales contracts, so they understand this is what, you know, this is some of the problems that we could occur during an inspection. So they're aware of these things already.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing, not to take it away from you, is that open permits is an issue too, that we're finding too.
Hate them with a passion.
So I just wanted to touch base on
Well,
that.
that's a general inspection item in the NABOR contract. It is not a defective item under the FARBAR contract. It's a whole separate category that's treated a whole different way. Yeah, I absolutely agree, Jim.
Right. Because when we're listing a home, I'm having to do an inspection or see if there's any outstanding permits, so we're ahead of the game versus at the time we do a contract.
Well, we do those for free. I
Right.
mean, I'm always writing to the agents, so we usually have an article every week, and we do those for free. It gives the owner time to start working on those items. If it's an older item, something 23 years old, or 19-year-old shutters that weren't CO'd, a decision can be made. It could be added into the seller's disclosure, and the buyer can agree to accept it in that condition. But it gives the owner a heads up on something. It gives them an opportunity to go back to their seller, whoever
Right.
sold it to them, if it's an issue. Finding out, during the 15-day period we have in the NABOR contract is too stressful.
Right.
And nobody knew it was going to be this bad, but it is really bad.
It's very stressful. So, well, Don, thanks for coming on the show this
Thanks
month.
for having me,
and
Jim.
I'll look forward to seeing you next month. Okay?
Yes, absolutely.
And thank you for tuning in today. Thank you.